The phone rang at 2 in the morning, and I almost didn't answer. 5 years of silence, and suddenly my sister Charlotte was crying on the other end, begging me to come home. The family construction business was collapsing, she said. Dad had a stroke. They needed me. I stared at my phone in the darkness, remembering how they'd cut me out of everything when her tech startup took off, how they'd uninvited me from family gatherings, how my own parents stopped returning my calls the day Charlotte made her first $1 million. I hung up on Charlotte, but sleep was impossible after that. My mind kept drifting back to how everything fell apart. 5 years ago, I was 28 years old, working as project manager at Thompson & Sons Construction in suburban Philadelphia. It was the family business my grandfather started back in 1976. I'd been there since I was 22, right out of Penn State with a business degree and big dreams about modernizing our operations. I had real plans back then. I wanted to bring the company into the 21st century with better project management systems, expand into sustainable building practices, make us competitive with the bigger firms. I worked 60-hour weeks, learned every aspect of the business from the ground up. I thought I was building my future. Then Charlotte's tech startup launched. She was 25 at the time, fresh off creating some project management app for construction companies. The irony wasn't lost on me. My little sister was supposedly revolutionizing the industry I dedicated my life to, and suddenly, I couldn't do anything right in my parents' eyes. Family dinners became unbearable. Every Sunday at Mom and Dad's house in Chestnut Hill turned into the Charlotte Show. She'd raised $2 million in funding. She got featured in some business magazine. She was speaking at conferences. Meanwhile, I just closed a $3.2 million contract with the city for a new municipal building, my biggest deal ever, and Dad barely looked up from his plate when I mentioned it. "That's nice, Harry," he'd said, then immediately turned to Charlotte. "Tell us more about the Forbes article." It got worse over the next 6 months. Charlotte's company was suddenly valued at $50 million. Venture capitalists were throwing money at her, and my parents started what they called reorganizing the business. Suddenly I was being excluded from meetings I used to run. Dad and Mom started calling Charlotte for advice on company decisions, even though she'd never worked a single day in construction. I confronted them at Sunday dinner one night. "I've given 6 years to this company. What's happening here?" Dad's face had gone cold. "Charlotte understands modern business, Harry. You're stuck in old ways. Maybe that's why we're not growing like we should be." I tried to argue that the family business needed construction expertise, not tech guru advice. That our clients valued relationships and quality work, not flashy apps. But Dad exploded. "Maybe you should work somewhere that appreciates your limited vision," he'd shouted. Within 2 weeks, everything changed. My authority was stripped away. They moved me to a basement office, stopped inviting me to client meetings. My younger brother Sean, who was only 24 and had been working there for just 2 years, got promoted to senior project manager, over me. The final straw came at Thanksgiving. I showed up at my parents' house like I had every year of my life, but there was no place setting for me at the table. I stood there in the dining room, holding a bottle of wine, staring at the empty space where I should have been. Mom actually looked surprised to see me. "Oh, Harry, we thought you'd be too busy to come." Charlotte was there with her venture capitalist boyfriend, both of them dressed like they were attending some gala. My parents were fawning over them, asking about their recent trip to Napa Valley. Sean smirked at me from across the room. I left without saying a word. The next morning, I quit. Packed up my desk, sent a 2-sentence resignation email, and drove to Pittsburgh. I found work as an independent construction consultant. The pay was decent, the work was honest, and nobody compared me to my sister every 5 minutes. I tried calling my parents for months after that. Every call went to voicemail. Every message went unanswered. The last time I'd spoken to Mom was 2 years ago, on my birthday. She'd answered by accident, realized it was me, and said, "I can't talk now. Charlotte's flying us to Napa. before hanging up. After that, I stopped trying. I built a life in Pittsburgh, started dating Rachel, a teacher I met at a coffee shop, made new friends who didn't know anything about my family drama. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was peaceful, until that phone call at 2 in the morning. Charlotte called again the next morning. 8 voicemails, each one more desperate than the last. I finally listened to one while making coffee. "Harry, please. Dad's in the ICU. The business is drowning in debt. We need you. I need you. Please call me back." Rachel found me staring at my phone. She knew the whole story. I'd told her everything on our 3rd date, and she'd held my hand while I talked about the hurt I still carried. "Don't do it," she said. "They made their choice 5 years ago. Don't let them hurt you again." But something in Charlotte's voice haunted me. The desperation, the fear. Despite everything, some stupid part of me still cared. I called Marcus, the family lawyer. He'd been a friend of my grandfather's, always treated me with more respect than my own parents did. He was reluctant to talk at first, but I pressed him. "Marcus, I need to know what's really going on." There was a long silence on the phone. Then he sighed. "Harry, there's something you should know. 3 years ago, your parents updated their will. You're not in it anymore. Everything goes to Charlotte and Sean." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I sat down hard on my couch, the phone pressed to my ear. "What?" "I advised against it," Marcus said quietly. "But Charlotte pushed for it. She told them you were holding the family back, that you'd abandoned them by leaving. Your parents signed without much hesitation. They hadn't just abandoned me emotionally. They'd erased me legally, written me out of their lives completely, and now they wanted my help." Rachel was watching me with worried eyes. "What did he say?" I told her. She shook her head, anger flashing across her face. "That's it, Harry. You're not going. They don't deserve your help. They don't deserve you." She was right. I knew she was right. But I couldn't stop thinking about one thing. Why did they need me now? What was so bad that they'd break 5 years of silence? Against every bit of Rachel's advice, I got in my truck the next morning and drove to Philadelphia. The 3-hour drive gave me way too much time to think. Every mile brought back memories I'd tried to bury. The exit for Valley Forge reminded me of the time Dad took Sean and me to see the historical site when we were kids. The King of Prussia Mall exit reminded me of Christmas shopping with Mom. By the time I reached the city limits, my jaw was clenched so tight it ached. I went to the hospital first. Dad was in the ICU on the 4th floor. Mom was in the waiting room, looking like she'd aged 20 years. Her hair was completely gray now, and she had dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't hide. When she saw me, her reaction wasn't the relief I'd maybe secretly hoped for. It was complicated. Guilt, mixed with something that looked almost like resentment. "You came," she said, hugging me stiffly. "Thank you." No apology. No acknowledgement of 5 years of nothing. Just thank you. Like I'd done her some casual favor. The doctor came out and explained Dad's condition in medical terms I barely followed. Major stroke, partially paralyzed on his left side. Might not fully recover. The doctor noted that Dad's blood pressure had been dangerously high for months, stress-induced. Charlotte appeared while the doctor was talking. She looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine, even at the hospital. Designer suit, perfect makeup, expensive haircut. But her eyes were desperate, red-rimmed from crying. She actually looked shocked that I'd come. "Harry," she said, "can we talk? Privately?" She led me to a small family consultation room. Mom and Sean followed. Sean barely nodded at me, his face blank and unreadable. Charlotte sat down across from me and folded her hands on the table. "Harry, I know we haven't been close lately." "Lately?" I interrupted. "You mean for 5 years? Since you had me erased from the family?" She flinched but pushed forward. "The construction company is $800,000 in debt. 3 major projects failed in the past 18 months. Clients are suing us for incomplete work. We're bouncing payroll checks. The bank is threatening to call our line of credit. We're going to lose everything, including Mom and Dad's house. They used it as collateral. I stared at her, trying to process this. How? The company was solid when I left. We had steady contracts, a good reputation, healthy profit margins. Sean got defensive immediately. Things change. The economy got tough. We had some bad luck with projects. Bad luck doesn't cause $800,000 in losses, I said. What really happened? Charlotte and Mom exchanged a glance that made my stomach drop. Mom said weakly, "We made some investment decisions that didn't pan out." "I want to see the books," I said. Charlotte hesitated. "That's not necessary. We just need you to help us restructure, deal with the creditors. You always had a good relationship with the suppliers." "I'm not doing anything until I see the financials," I said firmly. "I'm not an idiot, Charlotte." Reluctantly, she handed me her laptop. I spent the next hour in the hospital cafeteria, going through the company accounts with growing horror. What I found made me physically sick. Large transfers from the company accounts to an LLC I didn't recognize. Over $700,000 moved in increments over the past 2 years. When I traced the LLC registration, the address listed was Charlotte's business office. I stormed back upstairs and found Charlotte in the hallway. "You stole from your own family business?" Her face went pale. She grabbed my arm and pulled me into the stairwell. "Keep your voice down," she hissed. "You embezzled $700,000? Charlotte's perfect composure cracked. "I borrowed it. I was going to pay it back." The story came out in a rushed confession. Her tech startup had been failing 2 years ago. Burning through cash, investors pulling out, everything collapsing. She was going to lose everything she'd built, her reputation, her lifestyle. And she had access to the company accounts because Mom and Dad had given her signing authority when they'd pushed me out. "I just needed enough to keep things going until the next funding round," she said. "But it never came. I had to shut the company down 6 months ago. And now the construction company is collapsing, and auditors are about to discover the missing money." I stared at my sister, this person I barely recognized. Then she said the words that made everything clear. "You can fix this, Harry. You were the last person with full access before we updated the systems. You understand the accounts better than anyone. We can say it was mismanagement, accounting errors, not theft." "You want me to take the blame," I said slowly. "I want you to help me explain it," she said, but her eyes told the truth. "You always said family comes first. Prove it. Or do you want Mom and Dad to lose everything? Do you want Dad to have another stroke when he finds out his daughter is a thief?" Sean appeared at the top of the stairwell. "So, big brother, are you going to help or not?" He knew. Sean knew about the embezzlement. And from the way he was looking at me, he was in on this plan to make me the scapegoat. I felt the walls closing in. If I exposed Charlotte, my parents would lose everything and Dad might die from the stress. If I helped cover it up, I became complicit in fraud. Charlotte played her final card. "Besides, you're not in the will anyway. What do you care what happens to the business?" I left the hospital, sat in my truck, and called Rachel. "Come home," she begged. "Please, Harry, this isn't your problem." But I couldn't leave. Not yet. Despite everything, I couldn't let my father lose his life's work, and I couldn't let Mom end up homeless. I checked into a cheap hotel and decided to stay a few days to assess the real damage. The next morning, I met Charlotte and Sean at the company office. The place looked run down. Half the desks were empty. The project board that used to be full of active jobs was nearly bare. "I'll help," I told them. "But I'm doing this my way. We're going to find legal solutions to fix this mess." Charlotte looked relieved. Sean smirked like he'd won something. "I need full access to everything," I said. "All accounts, all project files, all contracts." "Fine," Charlotte said. Over the next 3 days, I dove into the company records. What I found was so much worse than embezzlement. The project failures weren't bad luck. They were deliberate. Projects had been underbid with impossibly thin margins. Subcontractors were paid premium prices for substandard work. Materials were being purchased at inflated costs from specific suppliers. I traced those suppliers. They were shell companies, and every single one was registered to an address in Sean's apartment building. My little brother had been running a massive kickback scheme, deliberately overbilling the company and pocketing the difference. His theft dwarfed Charlotte's. Over $1 million in 3 years. And the construction failures were because Sean was using cheap materials while billing for premium supplies. Buildings had actual structural issues, code violations. The worst discovery came when I pulled the files on a community center project in North Philadelphia. Sean had cut corners on the foundation work, used substandard concrete, undersized support beams. The building had passed inspection, but only because the inspector had been paid off. I found the payment records buried in Sean's files. The community center had opened 8 months ago. I pulled public records and found 3 formal complaints about cracks in walls and a settling foundation. The city engineering department had flagged it for reinspection next month. If they discovered the fraud, people could get hurt. And it wouldn't just be bankruptcy. It would be criminal charges. I confronted Sean that evening after everyone else had left the office. "I know what you've been doing," I said, showing him the evidence I'd compiled. Sean's face turned red, but not with shame, with rage. "You think you can come back here and judge me?" He spat. "Where were you when Dad needed help, when the business was struggling?" "I was here, Harry. I kept this company afloat. By committing fraud and putting people's lives at risk, I made us profitable," Sean said. "Or at least I tried to, before Charlotte's mess made everything fall apart. You always thought you were so much better than me, Dad's favorite. Charlotte might have been the golden child, but you were the one who got all his respect." I realized then that Sean's resentment went back way further than Charlotte's success. He'd always felt like he was third in line, never good enough. "I deserve to run this company," he said. "Not you. And I did run it, successfully. You destroyed it. And you endangered innocent people." Sean stepped closer, his voice low and threatening. "You're going to keep your mouth shut, or I'll make sure everyone knows Charlotte stole money, and I'll tell Dad it was your idea. Who do you think he'll believe? The son who abandoned him or the son who stayed?" I left the office, my mind racing. When I got to my truck, I realized my laptop was missing, the one I'd been using to compile evidence. I ran back inside. Sean was already gone, and I found my investigation files copied onto the company servers under my new login credentials. Sean was planting evidence to make it look like I'd discovered the fraud and was trying to frame them. My phone buzzed. "Unknown number. Stop digging, or everyone finds out. You were always the one with access to the accounts. People will believe you did it." I called Charlotte. She answered on the first ring. "Did you know about Sean?" I asked. Silence. "Charlotte, did you know your brother was committing fraud?" "He was keeping the company afloat," she said quietly. I turned a blind eye. "We all did what we had to do, Harry. People could get hurt. That community center is unsafe." "What do you want me to do?" Her voice rose. "Turn in my own brother? Dad's in the hospital. This will kill him. So you're just going to let it continue? If you expose Sean, I'll say you were part of it. You trained him, Harry. You set up all the systems he used. Who has more to lose here?" I hung up, feeling trapped from every angle. That evening Marcus called. "Harry, I don't know what you're doing, but someone just filed an anonymous report with the DA's office about potential fraud at Thompson & Sons. There's going to be an investigation." My blood ran cold. Sean had moved faster than I'd expected. "Your name is all over the recent financial transactions," Marcus continued. "You need your own lawyer." Now, I'd gone from abandoned family member to potential criminal scapegoat in less than a week. Rachel drove to Philadelphia that night. She found me exhausted and paranoid in my hotel room. "We're leaving," she said. "Right now, Harry. They're going to destroy you. If I leave, I look guilty. And that community center could collapse and hurt people. Harry, I can't walk away from this, Rachel. I can't." She saw the determination in my eyes and sighed, knowing she couldn't change my mind. I woke up the next morning to 53 missed calls. My phone had been buzzing all night, but I'd turned off the ringer trying to get a few hours of sleep. The first thing I saw when I checked the news was my face staring back at me. A local Philadelphia business news site had published an article, "Thompson & Sons Construction Under Investigation for Fraud, Former Manager Person of Interest." The article heavily implied I was the primary suspect. It mentioned that I'd mysteriously left the company 5 years ago and recently returned amid financial troubles. Quotes from anonymous sources close to the family suggested I'd been siphoning funds for years. My full name, my photo from the old company website. Everything was public. I rushed to the office. 3 voicemail messages from major clients terminating their contracts. The few remaining clients the company had were jumping ship. Sean was already there, wearing an expression of fake sympathy. "Wow, Harry," he said. "Your reputation really did a number on us. Maybe you should lay low for a while." He'd leaked the story. Timed it perfectly to make me look guilty before I could expose him. My phone kept ringing. Rachel's parents. They'd seen the article. It was being shared in Pittsburgh business circles. Rachel's father owned a successful plumbing supply company. He was on the phone with Rachel when I called her back. "You need to distance yourself from this man," I heard him say in the background. "He's going to drag you down with him." "Dad, Harry didn't do anything wrong," Rachel said, but I could hear the uncertainty creeping into her voice. Her mother got on the phone. "Rachel, you're 32 years old. Do you really want to tie yourself to someone facing fraud charges? Someone who lies to his own family?" The seeds of doubt were planted. I could hear it in Rachel's voice when we talked later. "I believe you," she said. But she didn't sound sure anymore. I reached out to Travis, an old friend who'd worked as assistant project manager under me years ago. We'd been close once. He finally agreed to meet me for coffee. But when we sat down, Travis looked uncomfortable. "Charlotte called me," he said. "She told me you're trying to frame her and Sean for your mistakes." He showed me his phone. Charlotte had sent him a doctored email chain that appeared to show me authorizing questionable payments. She said you're desperate, that you're going to try to drag everyone down with you. Travis wouldn't meet my eyes. "I can't get involved, Harry. I've got a wife, 2 kids, a mortgage. I'm sorry." I watched my entire support network evaporate in real time. At the hospital that afternoon, I found Mom alone in the waiting room while Dad slept. I sat down next to her. "Mom, we need to talk about what's really happening." She wouldn't look at me. "Did you know about Charlotte taking money from the company?" The silence stretched out for what felt like forever. Then, quietly, she told me. 2 years ago, she was desperate, Harry. Her company was failing. I felt like I'd been punched. "You knew? This whole time? What was I supposed to do? Turn in my own daughter? So you let the business collapse? Let Dad work himself into a stroke?" Mom's voice cracked. "Charlotte said she'd pay it back. She promised. And Sean said he could keep things going with smarter business practices." Smarter practices? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mom, he was stealing, committing fraud, endangering people. She shook her head stubbornly. "No. Charlotte said you'd try to blame them. She said you were always jealous of their success. My own mother had been poisoned against me. Why was I erased, Mom? Why wasn't I invited to family events? Why was I written out of the will?" She looked away. "Charlotte thought it was best. She said you were holding us back with old-fashioned ideas, that we needed to move forward without you. And you just agreed? I worked for that business for 6 years. You have to understand," Mom said defensively. "Charlotte was so successful. We thought she knew what was best for the family. So you chose her and Sean over me." She didn't deny it. "They stayed, Harry. They were here. You left. I left because you pushed me out. That's not how we saw it," she said quietly. I walked out of the hospital and found Rachel waiting in the parking lot. She'd been crying. "Harry, I can't do this anymore." My heart sank. I knew what was coming. My parents are right. This is too much. Your family is toxic, and you're drowning trying to save them. "Rachel, please. I just need time to prove my innocence." "And what if you can't?" she asked. "What if they succeed in framing you? Am I supposed to stand by you through a criminal trial? Lose my job because I'm associated with you?" She handed me the key to my apartment. "I love you, Harry, but I love myself more. I can't watch you self-destruct." She drove away. I stood alone in the parking lot, watching the taillights disappear. My phone buzzed again. Someone had tagged me on social media. The local evening news was running a story. I watched the video on my phone. Charlotte was giving an interview from the company office, looking professional and concerned. "We're cooperating fully with authorities," she said. "This is a family tragedy. My brother Harry, we had concerns about his business decisions years ago, which is why he left the company. We hoped he'd moved on with his life." The reporter asked, "Is it true he's returned and may be involved in the current investigation?" "I don't want to speculate, but the timing is suspicious. We're focused on protecting our clients and employees during this difficult time." She was convincing, sympathetic, the perfect victim. Sean stood behind her, nodding gravely. I checked into a cheaper motel. Couldn't afford the hotel anymore. My phone rang constantly with reporters, angry former clients, subcontractors who'd lost money. "Marcus called that evening. The DA wants to interview you tomorrow. I'll be there, but this is serious. They're building a case." I sat on the motel bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling. I'd lost everything. My family, my girlfriend, my reputation, potentially, my freedom. But as I sat there in the darkness, something shifted inside me. Anger replaced despair. They'd taken everything from me twice. Once through neglect and dismissal, now through active destruction. I was done being the victim. I pulled out my laptop and started documenting everything I knew. Evidence of Sean's fraud, Charlotte's embezzlement, the timeline of their frame job. Screenshots, financial records, everything I could access remotely. If they wanted to destroy me, I'd make sure the truth destroyed them first, even if it meant burning the whole family down. The interview with DA Walsh was scheduled for 10 in the morning. Marcus picked me up from the motel at 8. "Let me do most of the talking," he said. "Answer their questions honestly, but don't volunteer information." The DA's office was in downtown Philadelphia, an imposing government building that made me feel small. Walsh was a woman in her late 40s with sharp eyes and an expression that suggested she'd heard every lie imaginable. "Mr. Thompson," she said, gesturing to a chair. "Thank you for coming in voluntarily." Marcus sat beside me. Walsh laid out her case methodically. Financial documents showing my name on questionable transactions. Testimony from Charlotte and Sean describing my role in the company. My sudden departure 5 years ago, under what they characterized as suspicious circumstances. "And then you returned, just as our investigation began," Walsh said. "You can see how this looks." "I returned because my sister called me," I said. "My father had a stroke. She asked for my help." "Help covering up your crimes?" Walsh asked. "I didn't commit any crimes." That's when Walsh dropped her bombshell. "We have a witness," she said. "Someone who worked closely with you 5 years ago. She's prepared to testify that you set up shell companies and kickback schemes before you left, and that you trained your brother to continue them." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Who?" "Gina Palmer. She was your administrative assistant." I remembered Gina, young woman, maybe 23 at the time, fresh out of Temple University. She'd handled filing, scheduling, basic office tasks. Sweet kid who'd never given me any trouble. Gina wouldn't lie. She knows I ran that company honestly. Walsh slid a statement across the table. She says differently. She says you were inappropriate with her, pressured her to falsify documents, and when she threatened to report you, you arranged your own resignation and paid her to keep quiet. I read the statement, feeling sick. None of it was true. Not a single word. This is insane, I said. I never did any of this. That's what they all say, Walsh replied. After the interview, Marcus and I sat in his car in the parking garage. They've built a solid case against you, he said grimly. We need to find out what they have on Gina, why she'd lie. Marcus spent the afternoon making calls. He discovered that Gina had left the company 4 years ago and moved to Delaware. More importantly, she was engaged to Derek Russo, Sean's best friend from college. The connection was obvious. Marcus found Gina's social media accounts. Recent posts showed expensive jewelry, a new BMW, designer handbags. Someone had come into money recently. I think she was paid off, Marcus said, but proving it is another matter. That evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I drove to the hospital, technically violating the restraining order Charlotte had filed, but I needed to see my father. Mom was there when I walked in. She saw me and actually looked frightened. You can't be here, she said, standing up quickly. Charlotte said you might come. She said you're dangerous now. Mom, I'm your son. Please. Charlotte and Sean are lying about everything. The police called me, she said, her voice shaking. They asked about you, about when you worked at the company. If I noticed anything suspicious, my stomach dropped. What did you tell them? Tears filled her eyes. I told them the truth. That you always controlled the finances. That you were territorial about the accounts. That when Charlotte tried to help, you got angry and quit. That's not what happened. You know that's not what happened. I know my daughter wouldn't lie to me, Mom said firmly. Sean has been here every day keeping the business going. Where were you for 5 years? I stared at my mother, realizing she was going to testify against me. Whether she understood what she was doing or not, she was helping them destroy me. I left before hospital security could be called. Back at the motel, I turned on the local news. My arrest from the break-in at the office was now a major story. Headlines screamed, "Fraud suspect arrested breaking into family business." Charlotte gave yet another interview. This one more emotional. We're heartbroken, she said, dabbing at her eyes. Harry was once a valued member of our family. We tried to help him, but he's clearly spiraling. We're praying for him. The comment sections online were vicious. People calling for me to be locked up, saying I'd betrayed my family, hoping I got what I deserved. My face was everywhere, labeled a criminal. Rachel finally answered one of my calls that night. Harry, my firm asked me to take a leave of absence, she said. Her voice was flat, exhausted. Parents complained about me being associated with you. The school board is concerned about the publicity. Rachel, I'm sorry. So am I, she said. I'm staying with my parents for a while. I need space to think. I didn't do what they're saying. I want to believe you, Harry. I really do. But everyone keeps showing me evidence, and I don't know what's real anymore. She hung up. I sat on the motel bed, staring at my phone. No girlfriend, no family, no job, no reputation. Just accusations and a future that looked like prison. Marcus came by the next morning with coffee and bad news. Harry, right now the DA has your name on suspicious transactions. Your former employee saying you taught her fraud. Your mother's statement that you controlled finances. Your arrest for breaking in. And your siblings claiming you're trying to frame them. He paused, letting that sink in. Against that, you have your word and circumstantial evidence that might indicate Sean and Charlotte were involved. If this goes to trial, you're looking at 10 to 15 years in prison. What do I do? You have 72 hours before the preliminary hearing. We need to find real evidence, or a witness who'll contradict their story. The community center, I said suddenly. I told you about the structural issues. Marcus nodded slowly. If we can prove actual dangerous conditions exist, and that Sean covered them up, it might cast doubt on their narrative that you're the criminal mastermind. The city inspection isn't for another week. I don't have that kind of time. Then we need to make something happen sooner, Marcus said. An idea formed in my mind. Risky, potentially illegal, but I was out of options. I'm going to that community center, I said. I'm going to document the damage. And if I have to, I'll report it anonymously to force an emergency inspection. Marcus looked worried. Harry, be careful. If this goes wrong, what else can they do to me? I asked bitterly. I've already lost everything, but I hadn't. Not yet. I still had my freedom, and I was about to risk that too. I drove to the Riverside Community Center at dawn the next morning. The building sat in a modest neighborhood in North Philadelphia, a single-story structure that should have been a source of pride for the community. Instead, it was a ticking time bomb. I brought my camera, measuring tools, and foundation testing equipment I'd borrowed from an old contact who didn't ask questions. The center was scheduled to host an after-school program at 3 that afternoon. I had 6 hours to document everything and get out. The exterior showed obvious problems if you knew what to look for. Cracks in the foundation running up the walls. The north corner had settled at least 3 inches. Water damage near the basement entrance indicated foundation breach. I took hundreds of photos, measured everything, used the moisture meter to document excessive water intrusion. Then I pulled up the building plans from public records on my phone and compared them to what actually existed. The foundation should have been 18 inches of reinforced concrete. What I found looked like barely 12 inches, and the concrete mixture was wrong. I could tell just by looking at how it was crumbling. The support columns in the basement were undersized by at least 20%. My professional assessment was clear. This building was actively failing. It wasn't safe for anyone, let alone children. I called the city building inspector's office from a burner phone I'd bought. I need to report a structural emergency at the Riverside Community Center, I said. The foundation is compromised. The building is occupied by minors daily. You need to send someone immediately. The inspector who answered, Frank Bradley according to his introduction, sounded skeptical. Sir, are you a licensed engineer? We can't shut down a public facility based on an anonymous tip. There are 70 kids coming here this afternoon, I said urgently. You need to come now. We'll send someone in 2 to 3 days, Bradley said. That's the best I can do. I hung up, frustrated. The bureaucracy wasn't going to move fast enough. I stood outside the community center, looking at the building, thinking about those 70 kids. I could walk away. Let the system work slowly. Hope it got condemned before my hearing. Keep myself out of more trouble. But what if it collapsed today? What if a child got hurt because I played it safe? I made the hardest choice of my life. I called the local news station. The same reporter who'd covered Charlotte's interviews answered. Her name was Amy Gonzalez. I have proof of construction fraud that's putting children's lives at risk, I said. Right now, today. Are you interested? She arrived in 20 minutes with a camera crew. I showed Amy everything. The foundation issues, the documents proving Sean had cut corners, the inspection records showing bribes paid. She was skeptical at first. You're the guy accused of the fraud, she said. Why should I believe you? Because I'm willing to go on camera and stake my freedom on this, I said. And because you can bring your own structural engineer to verify everything I'm saying. Amy made some calls. Within an hour, Dr. Richard Hayes from Temple University arrived. He was a structural engineering professor who occasionally did forensic work for the city. Dr. Hayes spent 90 minutes examining the building. I watched his expression go from curious to concerned to horrified. This building should be evacuated immediately, he told Amy on camera. The foundation is failing. I'm honestly shocked it's still standing. While they were filming his assessment, school buses pulled up outside. 73 children between the ages of 6 and 12 started filing into the community center, excited and noisy, completely unaware of the danger. I ran to the entrance, where a woman was greeting kids. Her name tag read Maria Santos, Director. "You need to evacuate," I said, slightly out of breath. "The building is unsafe." "Who are you?" she asked, immediately defensive. "You can't just come in here making accusations." "I'm a construction professional, and this building is about to collapse." Maria pulled out her phone, probably to call security. Dr. Hayes came over, showing his credentials. "Ma'am, I'm a licensed structural engineer from Temple University. This building is genuinely dangerous. Please evacuate immediately." Something in his tone convinced her. Maria's face went pale, and she started calling out instructions to her staff. "Everyone out. Emergency evacuation. Leave your things. Just get outside now." The evacuation had just started when we heard it, a loud crack that echoed through the entire building. The northeast corner visibly shifted. Ceiling tiles fell in the main activity room. A water pipe burst from the shifting foundation, spraying water everywhere. Kids started screaming. Staff members rushed to get everyone out, but some of the younger children froze in fear. I ran inside. 3 kids, maybe 6 or 7 years old, were standing in the hallway crying, too scared to move. I picked up 2 of them, one under each arm, and yelled for the third to hold on to my shirt. Another crack. The door frame shifted. I could see the ceiling starting to buckle. I got the kids outside, just as part of the ceiling collapsed behind us. Dust and debris exploded through the doorway, but everyone was out. No injuries. 73 children safe on the sidewalk across the street. Amy's camera crew had captured everything. The evacuation, the structural failure, me carrying kids to safety, the building's visible collapse. Fire trucks arrived, sirens blaring, police cars, more news crews. The city inspector, Frank Bradley, showed up and went pale when he saw the damage. "Oh my God," he said. Dr. Hayes gave his official assessment on camera. This building was doomed to fail. Someone cut significant corners during construction, and whoever approved this should face criminal charges. Amy interviewed me right there on the street, camera rolling. "Why were you here today, Mr. Thompson?" "Because I knew this building was unsafe," I said. "My brother Sean Thompson, of Thompson and Sons Construction, oversaw this project. He used substandard materials and bribed inspectors to pass it. I have proof." I handed her copies of the documents. Sean's emails approving inferior concrete suppliers, his signatures on fraudulent change orders, payment records to the inspector. Amy reviewed them with Dr. Hayes, who confirmed what they showed. "This is deliberate fraud. This nearly killed children today." The story went live within an hour. Hero whistleblower prevents tragedy, exposes construction fraud. My earlier arrest was reframed. Thompson was attempting to gather evidence when he was arrested by his brother. I sat on the curb across from the ruined community center, exhausted, watching the news crews interview parents who were crying with relief that their children were safe. My phone rang. Sean, his voice high and panicked. "What did you do? You've destroyed everything." "I documented your fraud, Sean. The fraud that could have killed kids. The fraud you tried to pin on me. You can't prove I knew about the foundation issues. I have your emails approving the concrete supplier, your signature on the change orders, your payments to the inspector. It's over." There was a pause. Then Sean said something interesting. "Charlotte said you'd never actually do it. She said you cared too much about the family. So they'd been betting on my loyalty, on my weakness. They'd bet wrong. But within 2 hours, Charlotte made her countermove. She held an emergency press conference, flanked by lawyers, looking devastated. The news stations cut to her live feed. "I'm 12 weeks pregnant," she announced. "And I need to reveal something painful. My brother Harry threatened me and my unborn child last week when I refused to cover up his crimes. She showed her phone to the cameras, displaying text messages allegedly from me. You'll regret this. I'll make sure you lose everything. Your baby won't save you. I'd never sent those messages. I knew immediately she'd faked them. Charlotte was crying now. I've been afraid to come forward because Harry said no one would believe me. But after today, seeing how far he'll go, how he brought media to a building he knew was unstable, possibly even triggered its collapse to prove his point, I can't stay silent. Who knows what else he's capable of? The media narrative split instantly. Was I a hero who saved children, or a dangerous man willing to endanger kids to frame his siblings? Charlotte's lawyer stepped up to the microphone. We're considering filing charges for terroristic threats against an unborn child. My phone exploded with calls. Marcus sounded panicked. Harry, Charlotte's move was brilliant. She's made you look like a threat while positioning herself as a vulnerable pregnant woman. The texts are fake. I never sent them. Can you prove that? Do you have your phone records? I realized my phone had been in police custody after my arrest. Returned just yesterday. Who knows what Sean had done to it during that time? We need a forensic analyst, Marcus said. That's $20,000 minimum. Do you have it? I didn't. I was completely broke. Public opinion fractured. Some people saw me as a hero. Others saw me as unhinged. Social media was brutal on both sides. But then, late that evening, my phone rang from an unknown number. Mr. Thompson? This is Gina Palmer, the woman who'd testified I'd taught her fraud. I saw the news, she said, her voice shaking. All of it. I can't do this anymore. Sean paid me to lie. I have proof. Recordings, texts, bank records, everything. Hope surged through me. How much proof? Enough to bury them, she said. I need to meet with your lawyer. Tomorrow. I called Marcus immediately. She's willing to flip? He asked. She says she has recordings. This could change everything, Harry. If she testifies that Sean and Charlotte orchestrated a conspiracy to frame you, I let myself feel hope for the first time in days. But I knew better than to celebrate yet. My family had proven they'd do anything to destroy me. This wasn't over. Gina Palmer walked into Marcus's office the next morning looking terrified. She was 27 now, dressed conservatively, no longer the carefree young woman I remembered. She sat across from Marcus and me, hands shaking, as she pulled documents from her bag. I couldn't live with myself after seeing those kids evacuated, she said. I have a niece that age. She laid it all out. Recordings on her phone of Sean coaching her on what to tell investigators. His voice was clear on the audio. Tell them Harry set everything up before he left. Say he was inappropriate with you so they won't trust his character. You do this for me, and you'll be taken care of. There were bank records showing $50,000 deposited into Gina's account 2 days after she'd agreed to lie. Text messages from Sean discussing details of her false testimony. And emails, dozens of them, between Charlotte and Sean planning to neutralize my credibility and use Gina as insurance against my accusations. Why did you agree to do it? I asked. Gina looked at me with tears in her eyes. Derek, my fiancé, is Sean's best friend. Sean said it was just to protect the family from false accusations, that you were trying to destroy them out of spite. He made it sound noble. And $50,000 would let us buy a house, start our lives together. What changed? Marcus asked. I saw you carry those kids out of that building, she said. I saw you risk your life for children you didn't know. And I realized Sean lied to me about everything. You're not the villain. He is. Marcus immediately contacted D.A. Walsh. Emergency meeting scheduled for that afternoon. Gina testified under an immunity deal. I sat in the DA's office and watched Walsh's expression transform as she reviewed the evidence. The recordings, the bank statements, the conspiracy emails. Mr. Thompson, Walsh said when she'd finished, it appears you were telling the truth. I apologize that you weren't believed sooner. The apology felt hollow after everything I'd been through, but it was something. We're filing charges against Sean Thompson and Charlotte Thompson for fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, and witness tampering, Walsh continued. All charges against you are being dropped immediately. That evening, I watched the news coverage from my motel room. Sean was arrested at his apartment, led out in handcuffs while cameras captured everything. Charlotte was arrested the next morning at her condo, 8 weeks pregnant and crying, claiming persecution. Both were arraigned with bail set high due to flight risk. The media coverage reversed completely. Construction fraud scheme exposed, 2 siblings arrested, 3rd exonerated. My name was cleared publicly. But clearing my name didn't undo the damage. Thompson and Sons Construction filed for bankruptcy the next day. The company my grandfather started in 1976 was gone. 73 employees lost their jobs. My parents' house went into foreclosure. I felt sadness for the legacy lost. But I also knew the company had died years ago, when my family chose greed over integrity. 2 days later, Marcus called. Your father woke up. I drove to the hospital, unsure what kind of reception I'd get. Dad was in a rehabilitation room now, out of ICU. The paralysis was permanent, but he could speak and understand everything. When I walked in, Mom was there. She looked at me with shame and couldn't meet my eyes. Dad saw me and immediately started crying. Harry, he said, struggling to get the words out through partial paralysis and emotion. Oh God, Harry. Marcus told me everything. I sat in the chair next to his bed, not knowing what to say. I failed you, Dad continued, tears streaming down his face. As a father, as a man, Charlotte was successful, and I was so proud. Sean was ambitious. But you were solid, honest, good, and I threw you away like you meant nothing. His words came out slowly, painfully. I can't undo what I did. Can't give you back those 5 years. The business is gone. The family is destroyed. It's all my fault. I enabled them. I ignored you. I signed that will cutting you out because Charlotte convinced me you were holding us back. He paused, struggling for breath. I don't deserve forgiveness. But you need to know, I'm proud of you. You saved those children. You had every reason to walk away and let us destroy ourselves. But you stayed and did the right thing. You're twice the man I ever was. I sat in silence for a long time. 5 years I'd wanted to hear those words. Now that they'd come, I felt empty. Dad, I wanted your approval for so long, I finally said. When you didn't give it, it broke something in me. He nodded, still crying. But I don't need it anymore, I continued. I know who I am. I'm not the forgotten son. I'm not the scapegoat. I'm someone who stands up for what's right, even when it costs everything. I paused, then said the words I needed to say for myself, not for him. I forgive you, Dad. Not because you deserve it, but because holding on to anger is killing me too. You're going to spend the rest of your life dealing with what Charlotte and Sean did, what you enabled. That's your burden. I'm letting mine go. Mom entered then, looking like she'd aged 20 years in 2 weeks. She saw me with Dad and hesitated. Mom, I said. She broke down completely. I testified against you. I believed her lies. My own son, and I chose her word over yours. Yeah, you did, I said simply. I don't know how to ask for forgiveness. I don't forgive myself. Mom, you chose. For 5 years, even when Charlotte was stealing, even when Sean was committing fraud, you chose them over me. That's something you have to live with. We lost everything, she said, voice breaking. The house, the business. Charlotte's going to prison. Sean's looking at 15 years minimum. And we're old and broke with nowhere to go. I could have walked away completely. Let them figure it out on their own. They'd earned that. Instead, I made a different choice. Marcus is helping me set up a trust, I said. Small monthly payments, so you won't be homeless. Enough for Dad's medical care and a modest apartment. It's not charity, it's decency. But I'm not your son anymore. Not in the way I was. I'm someone who helps people in need. And right now, you're in need." Mom sobbed with gratitude and shame. Dad managed to say, "Harry, you don't have to do this." "I know," I said. "That's why I'm doing it. Because someone in this family should act with integrity." When I left the hospital, Rachel was waiting in the parking lot. She came as soon as she heard I'd been exonerated. "Harry, I'm so sorry," she said. "I should have believed you. I should have stayed." I looked at this woman I'd thought I'd spend my life with. "You made the choice that felt right for you," I said. "I don't blame you." "Can we try again?" she asked. "I love you. I was scared and I ran. But I love you." I realized something in that moment. She'd left when things got hard. Only came back when I was vindicated. When it was safe to be associated with me again. "Rachel, you're a good person," I said gently. "But I need someone who stays when things are terrible. Not just when they're good. I needed you then. I don't need you now." She nodded slowly, understanding, and drove away. It hurt. But I knew it was right. 3 months later, I sat in the courtroom for Sean's trial. I testified about the fraud, the cover-up, the frame job. The jury convicted him on 12 counts. The judge sentenced him to 18 years in prison. Sean looked at me from across the courtroom with pure hatred. "You destroyed this family," he said. "No," I replied quietly. "You did that yourself." Charlotte's trial came 4 months later, after she gave birth to a daughter who was immediately adopted. She was convicted on 9 counts and sentenced to 12 years. She didn't look at me during sentencing, just stared straight ahead, her face blank. There was no satisfaction in watching them sentenced, just sadness for what could have been. A year after everything fell apart, I found myself testifying before the state legislature about construction fraud and inspection corruption. My testimony helped pass new regulations requiring stricter oversight and harsher penalties. I became a consultant for fraud prevention in the construction industry. The work didn't pay as much as running the family business would have, but it was meaningful. I was helping prevent what happened to the Riverside Community Center from happening anywhere else. I met Elena Rodriguez at the groundbreaking for the new community center. She was the structural engineer overseeing the rebuild. We started talking about load-bearing requirements and foundation specifications, and somehow that turned into coffee, then dinner, then more. She knew my whole story, saw who I really was. Our relationship built slowly, based on respect and shared values. No drama, no betrayal, just 2 adults building something real. 2 years after the original center's collapse, the new Riverside Community Center opened. It was beautiful, built properly, with a plaque near the entrance that read, "In gratitude to Harry Thompson, whose courage and integrity saved lives." I stood at the opening ceremony, surrounded by families whose children I'd helped save. Maria Santos hugged me tight. "You gave us our children's future," she said. For the first time in years, I felt something I'd thought I'd lost forever. Pride, belonging, purpose. 3 months after the community center reopening, I received a letter forwarded through Marcus. Prison mail. From Charlotte. She wanted to see me. Claimed she wanted to apologize. I debated for a week whether to go. Elena thought I shouldn't. "You don't owe her anything," she said. "You've moved on." But part of me needed closure. Not for Charlotte. For myself. The women's correctional facility was 2 hours north of Philadelphia. I signed in, went through security, and sat in the visiting room waiting. Charlotte walked in wearing a gray prison uniform. No makeup, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked nothing like the polished executive who'd destroyed my life. She sat down across from me, separated by a table. "Thank you for coming," she said. I nodded but didn't speak. "I'm sorry," she continued. "For everything. I was greedy, selfish, scared. I destroyed you to save myself, and I destroyed our family in the process. I know, I said. Do you hate me? I thought about that question. Really thought about it. No, I finally said. I don't hate you. I don't feel much of anything for you anymore. You're my sister by blood, but you're a stranger to me. I hope you find peace, Charlotte. I really do. But I can't be part of your life. I stood up. Harry, wait, she said. Will you visit again? No, I said gently. This is goodbye, Charlotte. I walked out without looking back. Driving home, I thought about everything that had happened, about the family I'd lost and the life I'd built from the ashes. For 5 years, I'd thought I was nothing without my family's approval. I'd thought being forgotten meant I had no value. I was wrong. When they abandoned me, they didn't take away my worth. They just revealed they'd never recognized it in the first place. I learned that family isn't just blood. It's the people who stay when everything falls apart. It's the integrity you maintain when no one's watching. It's the courage to do right, even when it costs you everything. My sister chose success over honesty. My brother chose money over safety. My parents chose comfort over their own son. Those were their choices, their failures, not mine. I could have walked away, let that building collapse, let those children pay for my family's sins. But I didn't, because my worth isn't defined by how they treated me. It's defined by who I choose to be when everything is on the line. 6 months later, Travis called. My old friend who'd refused to help me during the investigation. Harry, I saw what you're doing, he said. The community projects, the fraud prevention work, your testimony that changed the laws. I was wrong about you. We all were. Yeah, you were, I said. But thanks for calling. I'd like to buy you a beer sometime. Make things right. I considered it. Part of me wanted to say no, to hold on to that hurt. But I'd learned something about forgiveness. It's not about the other person deserving it. It's about not letting their mistakes define your future. Maybe someday, Travis, I said. But right now, I'm exactly where I need to be. I hung up and looked around my office. Photos on the wall from various projects. The community center plaque, a smaller version they'd given me. A picture of Elena and me at a construction site, both wearing hard hats and smiling. My phone buzzed. Elena texting. Dinner tonight? I'm cooking that pasta you love. I smiled and texted back. I'll bring dessert and wine. I packed up my laptop and headed out. The evening sun was setting over the city, painting everything in shades of gold and orange. I had a consultation tomorrow morning with a nonprofit building affordable housing. Meaningful work that helped people who needed it. My life wasn't what I'd planned when I was 28 and working at the family business. It was better. I wasn't rich. I wasn't famous. My last name didn't mean anything anymore except to me. But I was free. Free from the weight of trying to earn love from people who didn't know how to give it. Free from the burden of loyalty to people who'd shown me none. Free to build a life on my own terms, based on my own values. I'd learned the hardest lesson. Your family's rejection doesn't define your value. Your integrity when you're alone and abandoned shows who you really are. Sometimes the family you build is more important than the one you were born into. And standing up for what's right, even when it costs everything, is the only path to true peace. I'm Harry Thompson, not the golden child, not the forgotten son, just a man who knows the difference between what's easy and what's right. And that's enough. That's always been enough. 3 years after everything began, I'm living proof that you can survive betrayal, rebuild from nothing, and find something better than what you lost. Not because you're special or lucky, but because you refuse to let other people's choices destroy who you are. The family business is gone. My relationship with my parents is distant but civil, supported by the trust I set up. Charlotte and Sean will spend years in prison, paying for their crimes. And me? I'm building community centers and affordable housing. I'm consulting on fraud prevention. I'm testifying before legislatures to change laws. I'm with a woman who sees my worth without me having to prove it. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. So let me ask you something, because maybe you've faced this too. Have you ever been abandoned by the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally? Have you ever been blamed for someone else's mistakes? Have you ever had to choose between your integrity and your family? If so, what did you do? How did you survive it? Did you find peace on the other side? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might help someone else who's going through the same thing right now. And if this story resonated with you, if it made you feel something or think about your own relationships differently, please hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming adversity and finding strength you didn't know you had. Share this with someone who needs to hear that they're not alone, that being abandoned doesn't mean you're worthless, and that sometimes losing everything is how you find yourself. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminded you that your value isn't determined by who recognizes it. Your worth is inherent, unchangeable, and yours alone to define. Take care of yourselves. Stand up for what's right. And remember, the family that matters most is the one that shows up when everything falls apart. Until next time.